Have you ever sat through a sermon and just wondered, what really goes into creating that message you hear every Sunday? Well, we're about to pull back the curtain on the hidden world of how a sermon is made.
You might picture a pastor deep in prayer and study, surrounded by ancient books. And sometimes that's true. But it turns out there's a whole lot more to it. A world of toolkits, templates, and different levels of effort that most of us in the pews never, ever see.
And this isn't just about a pastor having a different style. No, what we're talking about is a genuine industry secret that gets right to the heart of a pastor's mission, their ethics, and their entire approach to ministry. It's something they rarely talk about with outsiders.
To really get a handle on this, you have to see just how much things have changed over the years. I mean, the way a sermon was put together a generation ago is worlds apart from how it's often done today.
The author talks about his own father who was a pastor. He locked himself away for an entire day, wrestling with the text, crafting a sermon from his own study and his own soul. It was a real work of art, a product of true talent. Fast forward to today, and a pastor can jump online, grab a pre-made sermon, use software, or even ask an AI to whip something up in just a fraction of the time. So you see the shift, right? It's a move from personal craft to digital convenience.
So, this is where it gets really interesting. The source we're looking at breaks it all down into 4 distinct levels of sermon preparation. Think of this as your new toolkit for being a more critical, more informed listener.
We're going to walk through all 4 of these levels, and they've got some pretty memorable nicknames. We've got the Parrot, the Cymbals, Matthias, and then at the very top, Paul. So let's start at the bottom and work our way up.
All right, first up is the A level, which is perfectly named the Parrot. And yeah, you can probably guess what this one's all about. It's basically just repetition without any original thought.
This is as basic as it gets. The pastor literally finds a sermon somewhere, online, in a collection, maybe even from an AI, and then just reads it word for word. The source is pretty blunt about this, saying the pastor who does this is someone who really lacks a sense of mission and, frankly, professional ethics. It's the ground floor.
Now, taking one step up from that, we've got the B level, known as the Cymbals. So we're moving away from just straight-up copying and more into, assembly.
With a B-level sermon, the pastor finds a message to use as a kind of blueprint. They'll tweak it a bit, use some software to pop in a few Bible verses, and what you get is fine. It's a stable, competent sermon, but there's no fire there. It's uninspired. The profile for this pastor? Someone who sees ministry less as a divine calling and more as just a 9-to-5 job.
Okay, now we're at C level, nicknamed Matthias. And this is fascinating because this is the level that most congregations absolutely love. This is what people often think of as a great sermon.
The Matthias sermon is like the B level, but with a major upgrade. It's polished, the pastor is a skilled communicator, weaving in personal stories, interesting historical facts, and powerful anecdotes that all build up to this big, emotional, inspiring finish. And for you, the listener, it feels incredible. It feels substantive. The pastor here is usually super enthusiastic, with a real sense of mission. But, and this is a big but, the source argues they might not have that deep, rock-solid understanding of the truths they're preaching.
And that brings us to the final level, the rarest, the most difficult, the highest form of preaching, the D level, named for the Apostle Paul. This one's in a league of its own.
A Paul-level sermon isn't built from a template or a script. It's born from what the source calls timely spiritual insight. And because of that, it's often incredibly direct, confrontational. Honestly, it can be really uncomfortable to listen to. The speaker doesn't use notes, their words are piercingly clear, and they just command the room. But here's the crazy part. Even though this is the highest level, the pastor who preaches this way is often unpopular, disliked, and sometimes even attacked for their challenging message.
So let's just quickly recap the whole system. You've got the A-level Parrot who just copies, the B-level Cymbals who use a template, the C-level Matthias who gives a polished, engaging performance, and finally, the rare D-level Paul who speaks difficult, spirit-led truth. As you can see, each level tells you a whole lot about the pastor's approach.
Okay, so we've got this cool framework, but so what? Why does this actually matter? Well, it has huge, real-world consequences, especially for a church that's on the hunt for a new pastor. The author makes this incredible claim. A sermon is like a window straight into a pastor's soul. He says you can understand 70 to 80% of their true character, their ethics, their spiritual depth, just by listening to how they preach. But here's the kicker. Most people, even church elders on a search committee, can't tell the difference between these levels. They hear a polished, emotionally moving C-level Matthias sermon, and they mistake that performance for genuine spiritual authority. The result? Churches end up hiring a pastor who is a fantastic speaker, but maybe not the deep spiritual leader they actually need, and they often don't figure it out until it's too late.
And this all leads us to the final and by far the most provocative point in this whole analysis. It's a really challenging idea about what we, as congregations, are actually looking for. Get this, the author remembers being in a meeting with a pastor search committee, and he looked them in the eye and said this, flat out, "You will absolutely not hire Paul. At best, you can hire Matthias." He told them they would never ever hire a D-level preacher. And how do you think they reacted? They accused him of heresy and told him he was never welcome back. So why on earth would he say something so inflammatory? He points to this verse. The argument, essentially, is that a true, hard-hitting, Paul-level message is a precious thing, a pearl. And it's not going to be given to people who aren't ready or willing to receive it, people who might just trample it and attack the messenger.
So, let's put all the pieces together for the final, powerful argument. The reason these truth-telling, D-level pastors are so rare isn't because there's a shortage of them.
It's because there's no demand for them. The source argues that churches don't have Paul-level preachers because deep down they'd much rather have the feel-good inspiration of a Matthias. Which leaves all of us with a pretty tough question to chew on. Is the real barrier to hearing profound, life-changing truth not the person in the pulpit, but our own willingness or maybe our unwillingness to actually listen?